And I want to thank you again for coming to session 2 of our 3-part series on theology and pastoral care as it concerns death, dying, grief, and loss. In our last session, we discussed the theology as it relates to pastoral care and the search for hope, especially as we encounter the loss of suffering that results from death. Peggy Way, in one of our books that we have right here, she states the Christian vision expects intimate community, perhaps even a culture of a utopian hope, the reign of God, a return to Eden. So this expectation of hope, this hope that we as caregivers try to impart as we journey with the care seeker who is dealing with grief through a death or a loss. Each care seeker has a unique story to tell, and we as caregivers need to be able to listen to that story in a way that reveals understanding and value. We always want to show that person we're caring for that they are valued, that they are important. Too often, we as potential caregivers want to jump right in and fix the problem right off. We want to get it in and get them out without really listening to what their real issue is. When we do this, we dismiss much of what the care seeker is searching for and what they're saying, or we are trying to say, and in a way invalidate their suffering and their grief. So when we try to jump too quickly into solving the problem, we don't let the person seeking care fully express what may be going on in their lives. If we get into that problem-solving mentality, we can really hurt the process of grieving. So, a way we do listening, we call this something we call reflective listening. And you have it on your handout there. Reflective listening. It's a skill that we as human beings, especially in this country, fail to really utilize to its full potential. We find ourselves wanting to get to the heart of the problem quickly, to find a solution, and move on to the next crisis. We find it difficult to actually sit back and truly listen to what the other person is trying to tell us. Even when we do, we may be trying to find ourselves come up with solutions to the problem as a conversation is taking place, thus not giving the person that we are trying to help our full and undivided attention. This is a common reaction, and one that can lead to unfulfilled expressions of grief and loss that are so important to the healing process. If we don't let the person fully express this, we are actually stunting and slowing down their healing process. So as caregivers, we need to be acutely aware of the person's need to express grief, anger, loss, and abandonment. Now, these are just few of the emotions that are possible. And there's a whole gamut of emotions that we've got to be ready to deal with as somebody comes to us in a grief-stricken situation. Reflective listening is one way to flesh out these forms of expression and give voice and space to them so that we can be better prepared to offer the type of comfort and support that is needed and that is hope-filled. Now, I provided you a handout that you're all scribbling on right now, which is great. And it lists some of the points we're going to go through. This is taken from the book by Carrie Doring on the practice of pastoral care. The first tool in our toolkit is something we call paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is a way of repeating back to the person what you thought they said. You don't use their exact words. You put it into your own words. But you repeat back to them what you thought they said so they can actually clarify it or correct it if it's wrong. It's not just repeating them. It's not just saying exactly it, but you try to put it in your own words to formulate a response. An example might be, someone comes to you and says, "I do not know what I'm going to do. Pete and I did everything together. He was taken from me way too soon." Now you may paraphrase this in this way. If I'm hearing you right, you're feeling abandoned and alone. That's kind of what you get out of that. And that person then has the ability to say, well, no, that's not really it, or, yeah, that is what I'm feeling. And you can continue the conversation. But that lets the care seeker know that you're actually trying to listen to what they're saying. And paraphrasing is a way that we can restate it in our own words to help make better sense for them and for us. In this way, we also take ownership for what we've heard and give the care seeker the opportunity to correct or clarify. You also validate their feeling and their understanding of what's going on. You give validation to their feelings and their concerns. It gives the care seeker an opportunity to make sure what you heard is what he or she said. So let's try this one. We're going to do a little exercise and see how we can do this. Here's one. Somebody may come to you and say, you know, I am angry at God. Joan and I were just married, and now God has taken her away from me. How would you paraphrase that? Give me an example of how you might paraphrase that example. I'm so angry at God. God, Joan and I were just married, and God took her away from me. So that you can show understanding. What might you say?
I don't know, but I just had that happen to me not too long ago. My cousin's daughter died of cancer, and she was, 29? Mm-hmm. And she's so angry with God, she doesn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say except listen.
And that's a very important point, is listening. You know, and that's what we're going to keep going through. The whole class is around listening. But also, part of that listening is trying to gain understanding of what they're actually saying. Yeah?
I think I would probably show empathy for their loss and their hurt, but then I would probably ask for clarification about why do you think God took her away?
Okay. We're going to get to a why question in a minute. And I'm going to tell you why we should...
My understanding is, why do you think God, I don't understand why.
Why?
I don't feel that God was the one who did it. We don't know that.
Right.
You know?
You can say something like, I understand that you're very angry at this point.
Right.
And I understand that you're feeling, why you're feeling this. Let's see if we can flesh this out some.
Yeah.
All I'm trying to do at this particular point is rephrase to that person what I thought that person said to me.
Right.
Okay, we're not to the point yet where I'm asking questions about it.
I get you.
We're trying to make sure that we understand, and we're validating, this person is angry at God.
Yeah.
Okay, this person is upset. And when we say, I understand your anger,
And I'll play
If you say, I hear you saying you're angry with God because he took Joe. Well, maybe that'll have some sobering effect on you.
It's possible, we got to...
But at least you stated what they stated.
Mm-hmm. And you're giving them validation. You say, I empathize with
And they know you're listening.
And you're listening. And you know you're listening. So that's good. That's what we're trying to show. We're trying to show that empathetic, constant attention to that person. Okay? Because if that person says, I'm angry at God, and you just blow on by that, that could be an issue.
Yeah.
We've all been there before.
We've all been there before.
Person's been there before. And God understands it. He knows it.
God understands. And that's something that we can try to get across. That's going to come a little bit later in our process here. But it's, right now we're trying to just gather information. We're trying to listen to this person the best way we know how. And paraphrasing, there are several situations where paraphrasing can be very helpful. And Carrie Doring in her book lists 3, but there are probably more. One is if you're dealing with somebody from a different culture. We are a melting pot in this country. We have various cultural backgrounds and various ways of using the English language. And we've got to be careful with somebody who comes in looking for care. Their use of language may be a little bit different than our use. And paraphrasing allows us a way to express what we thought they heard and allow for clarification. Okay, it allows us to kind of bridge that gap, you will, of cultural differences. We've got to be careful because sometimes our words mean something different to them than what we think they mean. And this is why paraphrasing can help. They say, oh, no, that's not what I meant, or and they can expand on it. So somebody with different cultural background, paraphrasing, a very useful tool. The second place that can be very useful is we call it pace of speech. You may have somebody come to you and they're speaking very slowly, taking lots of pauses, may even be wandering a bit down different paths, trying to get their thoughts together. That can lead a caregiver to, maybe assume too much or maybe not understand where it's going. Paraphrasing allows us a chance to keep our focus on what that person's saying. The extreme is something that happens to me. When I get excited, my speech goes like 90 miles an hour. Okay? I take off. Well, if you're a caregiver and somebody's sitting there rapid firing you, you may just say, well, let me see if I got this straight, or let me repeat, let me help me out with this. And you can paraphrase back what you heard or thought you heard and allow them a chance to say, yeah, that's it. Because sometimes they just go so fast, they're already on issue 3 and you're still trying to figure out how to get past issue 1.
And they talk faster than your ears can hear.
And that's true. And we can do that. So pace of speech is a great place to use paraphrasing. If you're talking too slow or talking too fast. Now, we've got to be careful that we don't assume that that's because of the issue. I have a habit of talking fast and normal. So if I come to somebody for care and I'm talking fast, they say, well, you're upset, slow down. That may not be what I need to hear. Okay, because that's probably the normal way I talk. So we just got to be careful that we don't start putting it back on the care seeker. We always accept responsibility. That's why paraphrasing is important. The next place that paraphrasing can be very helpful is level of content. What this is saying is you may have somebody come to you and say, I'm sad, and then sit there. Well, that's really not a whole lot of information there. Okay, so you may come and say, well, I understand you're sad, and maybe you'll draw them out. The other issue is they'll come and they'll tell you the life story in 30 seconds. Okay? You get overloaded with information. And paraphrasing allows us to go back and pick out the key elements that we heard and respond to those. To say those back in our own words so we make sure what they are saying is what we are hearing. You get overloaded with information, your head starts to spin and you start wondering where they're headed. Paraphrasing allows us to keep our focus back on the conversation and the caregiving mode. So level of content, culture, pace of speech, level of content. All these are very good tools for paraphrasing, to use paraphrasing for. So paraphrasing is a tool we can use to make sure we not only understand what is being said, but what is not being said. Sometimes what's not being said is almost or more important than what is being said, okay? And paraphrasing can help flesh that out and let you understand what's not being said too, okay? It also prevents us from jumping to conclusions. If we're paraphrasing, we're moving along with the person. Okay, we're not trying to fix the problem too quickly or too soon or think in our head, what the solution is going to be. We are on a journey with them. View this as a journey. Okay, when you're caring for somebody, you're on the journey, walking them through the entire process. You don't want to jump ahead to the solution too quickly, even if you think you know what the solution is. It's also a way to show empathy and value to what the care seeker is saying. We all want to fix the problem, and our tendency is to listen to only the surface details and formulate our responses from them. But by using this tool, paraphrasing, we can dig deeper and get below the surface and find out what's going on. So by holding back, allowing a person the space and time to speak, and then paraphrasing those things that may not have to be entirely clear to us, we allow the care seeker more of an opportunity to fully express their feelings and emotions. Okay? But don't overuse this tool. Don't redo every sentence that person's saying. Okay? You might look at it, they say a paragraph, you come back in one sentence and try to sum it up to make sure you got it. If you repeat everything that person's saying, they're going to get old, because nobody likes to have their words parroted back to them. but use it as a tool to gain a little more information, but use it carefully, okay? Another tool in the toolbox is clarifying questions. As Sherry just said a minute ago, asking questions is a great way to find out more information. And what we're talking about here is clarifying questions. We're asking questions that are related to what they are saying. Okay, we're trying to tie it back into what they're saying. We're not asking questions just to ask questions. You know, they come in and say they're having a problem, and you say, well, how's the family doing? They haven't got there yet, okay? You want to ask questions that are going to help you understand what that person's saying at that particular moment. So here's one we can try on for size. Steve has come into your office, and he states, my brother is a real jerk. He did not come to my mom's funeral, and now he's asking what is left to him in her will. Now you might ask a question like this. Did he give a reason to you for not coming to the funeral? That ties right back into, he said he didn't come to the funeral. Do we know why he didn't come to the funeral? Okay, that may be an important question. Okay? So I gave you one. Can we think of another question you may ask? Now, he told you that his brother's a real jerk, did not even come to his mom's funeral, and now he's asking what his part of the will is going to be. Can you think of another question that might draw out a little more information?
No, but I can tell you what you'd want to ask.
And you're going to lead me into another point in a minute. But no, it's hard sometimes to come up with questions, but we got to listen. He says his brother's a real jerk. You might say, well, is something in your past, what has your brother done to you? Why do you think this way? I don't like my questions. We're going to say my questions, but you might try to figure out what his feeling about his brother it really revolves around.
Well, I guess I was thinking, I thought maybe it was too insensitive, asking, well, what's your relationship like with your brother the last few years?
And that may be a good question, because, he stated, my brother's a real jerk. Well, you might say, okay, well, what has your relationship been? Has it been good? Has it been bad? That may give him a chance to say, well, we went to a baseball game, and that rat left me in the car, and I had to walk home. Whatever it is, maybe something that simple. It could be something from childhood. But the question like that is a clarifying question. It opens up an avenue for more expression.
I think I would have probably asked him, did your brother give a reason for why he couldn't come?
Yeah.
Because he just says he didn't come.
Mm-hmm.
And the brother might have said, I can't come because of so-and-so, but that he hasn't gotten around to sharing that portion.
And that could very well be. And that's a question. Did he give a reason?
Better question might be, why do you think your brother didn't come?
Why didn't he come in?
And then, these are good
And
questions.
then he could say, well, he said.
But most of the time when this happens, they already know the answer.
The
You
probability
already
is
know
he's
why they didn't
assumed.
come.
Yeah, and they may know the answer, and they may think they know the answer, but there may be something below that that's festering. It may have been that he got left at a baseball game, but maybe there's something a little further back, a little deeper, that's actually caused this to build. So asking clarifying questions will help us kind of flesh out where the person's feeling this way, why the person might be feeling this way. So we're trying to dig just a little bit deeper under the surface and try to find what may be hidden in the person's words. It also shows the care seeker that we're listening intently, because we're asking questions that are directly related to what that person's saying. We're earnestly trying to understand their situation in a way that does not pry. We've got to be careful when we deal with people in grieving situations that we don't ask questions that pry too much. Okay, we've got to make sure that we keep on focus with what they're giving us. Okay, you may know something about this person's past. Okay, but unless it comes out in normal conversations, you don't really need to go back. You don't want to start digging up something that they may want to keep buried. So you can be careful that we don't go too deep. But it can open a door in which the care seeker can shed some light on what is being revealed through the conversation. And you've all heard the expression, peeling back the onion, right? Peeling back the onion. That's what the clarifying questions can do, they can help us peel the onion back in a way that the care seeker feels comfortable doing. Okay? If you go slowly and ask appropriate questions, we can get to that center in a matter of time. It can also offer background information that may help us see why the issue is relevant to the current situation. You know, may go back and, there was something past that baseball game that causes this feud. We may get to that information and be able to offer better, hope-filled help. It's important that we allow the dialogue to flow in a manner that's comfortable for the care seeker. We don't want to push. You don't want to push the person too hard. You want to let them divulge and talk and converse in a way that's natural and flowing for them. Quite often, we ask way too many questions because we want to know. But sometimes asking too many questions may actually cause the care seeker to kind of withdraw a bit. Especially if they feel that you're going in a place they don't want to be right now. Okay, and we've got to be cognizant. We've got to be able to sense that if you see the person start drawing back and be real measured, you may want to back away from that line of thought for a while and go in a different direction. Because our main thing, we want to make the care seeker feel comfortable, we want to make that person feel safe, respected, and valued. And sometimes too many questions overwhelms them. They feel bombarded by all the questions.
And you can also ask them if there's anything you can do.
And if they came to you for counseling, they weren't coming for a cross-examination.
They won't come for cross-examination. And that's why it's important. We can use this tool, but we got to use it wisely. Okay, just because it's in your tool bag doesn't mean you got to take it out every time and hammer somebody with it.
And they didn't expect to have it done in 30 minutes. So
No.
You got to do things kind of in their time.
In their time. And don't expect one session to be all it's going to take.
No.
Somebody, especially if they trust you, they'll keep coming back to you as they get going. They'll keep coming back, or keep talking, keep the conversation open. Always keep that door open for somebody to come back and express to you what it is they want to express. Okay, the next tool in the tool bag is assessing a person's emotional state. Now, we may feel we're not qualified to make these kinds of assessments, but there are some clues that can help us determine how the person's holding up, how they're managing, how they're reacting to the situation they're presented with. We can use visual clues, such as how the face is looking, facial expressions, eye contact. Are they darting around the room? Are they looking down? Those kinds of expressions can give us some clues as to what they're doing. Body language, how the person is sitting in the room. If they're slouched, if they're like this, if they're wound up and tight, like Sherry's trying to demonstrate, those give you clues about their emotional state. Also, the way they use words, especially if you've known this person for quite a long time, if they're using words in a vastly different way, that may give you a clue that something may be going on. Also, the overall tenor of the conversation. Most of these counselor or caregiver, care seeker situations are pretty amiable, but if the tenor starts getting a little different, or you see it going in a different direction, you may be seeing something that you might want to address. So let's take, for example, the man speaking about his brother, the one he called a jerk. You may notice that he clenches his fists when he speaks about his brother. When he speaks his brother's name, he just goes, "Oh, that Greg." Well, that kind of gives you a clue that there may be some anger behind that, okay? Or if you say, he didn't come to Mom's funeral, the exasperation. You may say, okay, he's just drained here. You may be at the bottom of the barrel. You can make these kinds of observations, and they may help you as you're trying to offer the type of care that we're called to offer. But an important caution, we should not jump to conclusions based on a few small tidbits of information we get. But it does help us if we can evaluate a person's emotional state as we offer care to that person, If we see anger, we can try to ask clarifying questions that may lead that person to express what it is that's angering them. And then help them express it in a way that's helpful rather than debilitating. But we must be careful not to make judges that we cannot support or are not qualified to do. Okay? And here's a key element to this part of it. If it gets to where you feel it's above your capability, you need to pass it off to a professional or somebody else.
Yes.
Okay? You need to pass it off. And that goes for me as a pastor too.
Yeah.
I get in situations I can't handle, or I feel this is beyond my expertise or my comfort level. The worst thing you can do is try to fix somebody when you're not qualified to help them. Okay? So don't be afraid to tell a person, you know, I think we need to go a little bit further than I'm capable of doing. Okay, don't put the blame on them. It's you. You're not up to it.
You're not qualified.
Okay.
You don't have the qualifications.
I'm not the one that, you know, you never put it on them that, oh, you got such a big problem, I can't handle it. We never do that. We say, you know, I just don't think I'm the one that is qualified right now, like you said, or capable right now to give you the help I think you need. Would you mind? And then you can move on from there. Okay, the last tool in the toolbox is appropriate self-disclosure. And the word appropriate needs to be highlighted. This is a tricky one because too often we try to help someone by telling them about our own experience with a similar situation. We attempt to show empathy with them by telling them our story. And while it's important to share in the suffering through similar stories, we must be careful not to take the grieving and loss away from them and apply it to ourselves. We must remain in the position of caregiver, not creating a space where the care seeker feels they need to offer care to us. Okay?
Yes.
As we listen to the care seeker and find a similarity from our own experience, we can share it only to the extent that it shows solidarity and empathy, not that we are searching for care ourselves, or trying to show that our problem was so much bigger than theirs, or so much more severe. We've all been there, haven't we?
Yes.
We've come and said something to somebody, we have a problem, and that person instantly goes into a long dialogue about how their problem was and what they had to do to get over it. It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
It kind of minimizes your feeling of grief or loss. It makes it seem like your problem isn't all that important because they immediately went to how they fixed their problem.
Yeah.
Okay? So even if you've
It's all
had
about them and not you.
exactly. So even if you've had the problem before, you need to let them express it. And then when it gets to a point where you think it's appropriate, you can say, well, by the way, you know, this happened to me. So I kind of understand. You never say I fully understand because everybody's different. But I can kind of understand where you're coming from. This is how it affected me, and I can see similar things in you. That shows empathy. That shows solidarity. That also shows that you're paying attention to what they're saying. Right?
Yes.
So appropriate self-disclosure, that's a tough one because, you know, we all want to get in there and relay our stories. You know, we've done it, we've handled it, this is how. But as we discussed a moment ago, each of us is different. And my solution to a similar problem may be totally different than Sherry's solution to the same type of problem. Because we are different people and we react differently. So we can never just assume that because I solved it this way, that it's going to apply to the person we're providing care for. The important thing is we got to listen to their story and find a moment, if it approaches a moment, find a time when you can share your story in a way that builds solidarity and empathy with them. By doing that, we establish a connection, okay? If you find somebody who's been through a similar situation, it kind of builds a solidarity, it builds a connection. You have a bond now. You have somebody you can trust to know about how you're feeling. Not exactly, but close. as a care seeker, know that they are not alone, and that others have successfully navigated the similar situation can give them hope and peace as they work through their own situation. So again, appropriate self-disclosure is a great tool to use, but make sure you use it very limitedly and appropriately, because we don't want the care seeker going, okay,
Okay, I'm tired of hearing you.
you know, I came here for my problem, and now you're discussing yours, and, you know,
Yeah.
boy, I just, you know, I'm glad you came, Sherry, but I'm so glad you helped me out. We don't want that, okay? We've got to maintain that distance, that care-seeking distance, caregiving distance. Okay, so we've got 4 tools in our tool bag. Another important part of listening, and Sherry Fleming started to talk about it, or started to illustrate it. Body language, okay? We talked a little bit about evaluating the care seeker's emotional state with their body language. But our body language says an awful lot also, okay? If somebody comes to my office, and I'm slouched back in my chair with my leg up on the desk, like this, what kind of impression I give to the care seeker?
I wouldn't talk about anything.
I'm
There you go.
really interested in
I'm not really interested in what you got to say. You know, or if I'm sitting there going, that's not the impression we want to give, okay? The way we use our body language is very important. If we sit on the edge of our chair, posture pretty up, and we look them in the eye, okay, or focus on them. Some people get offended by looking in the eye, but focus on them. So you talked about tunnel vision earlier. If we just tunnel in on them, okay, and just sit there and listen, okay. I try to listen with my palms up. That's a receptive mode. Doesn't always work, but I try. That's if I'm sitting like this, or like this, that doesn't do any good. But you want to create a sense that they really know you are intently listening to them. And body language will tell a lot more at times than our words will. I could be sitting there, kicked back on my desk going, yeah, I see where you're going, and I know your brother is really a jerk, and I really understand all that. It doesn't carry as much weight if I'm sitting there looking them in the eye, going towards him, bending towards him, saying, I really understand, I get this. You're angry at your brother. You see what a difference that can make? It shows that you're really into what they're saying. So body language is important.
And if you're sitting beside somebody because there's no other place to sit, don't turn your back to them. I've
I
seen
tell you,
it
there's
before.
one thing they hadn't mentioned that I had seen with something that I was involved in with the minister. It was not, he turned it into a counseling session with someone in front of me. We were there for a different thing, and he turned it into a counseling session in front of me. And I didn't want to be there, but it was the eyesight, the way he looked at the person, showed you what his feelings for that person was to begin with. And then, whenever she would answer a question or say something, he'd have this look in his eye with this little smirk on his face, like, "Oh, sure, you're telling the truth." And I said, you got to be careful. You want to look and show interest, but you don't. If all of a sudden you're showing that you dislike them for some reason, it shows up in your eyes.
It does.
And your mouth.
And it makes it
like you saying
And
anything.
your body.
Yeah, and it makes a big
Of course,
difference.
that is part of facial expressions, but so many people forget that their eyes can tell things too.
Oh, yeah. And another part of body language is touching, okay? You may be sitting across from or next to somebody, and that person doesn't really like to be touched, okay? You gotta remember that, okay? But there are also people
Too bad,
who,
Sherry.
I'm sorry, I've already touched you twice today. I'm really infringing on this.
Okay, she always used to it now. She's been in this church too long, and we're a hugging church.
Well,
She's got to get used to it,
I never seen these guys get used to it. But there are
She
people.
wouldn't be here if she.
But there are people when there's the moment, if you see something, a light touch in the back of the hand shows that that you're really concerned and that you're listening intently. But be careful, because you don't want to send the wrong impression.
No.
So touching is really, as a part of it, but let's be careful how we use it, okay? Because you don't want that person walking out going, you know what the old pastor did? I don't want that problem. Okay, so we've got a few tools in our tool bag. A common question I get when somebody is nearing death or has passed is what to say.
Yeah.
What do we say? What do we tell that person who has just either approaching death or lost somebody? We've all been in a situation where we don't know exactly what it is that we can say. We do not want to say anything that may hurt or deny that person we are caring for their space in grieving. We don't want to say anything that's going to short circuit that. We definitely do not want to minimize the person's feeling of loss or hurt either. We don't want to say, oh, it's okay, get over it. We never want to do that. Part of active listening is knowing what we can say and what we should stay away from. Quite often, we just say what has been ingrained in our brains from birth, from our culture, from our church teachings, from school, from what we've heard other people. These things get ingrained in us, and we just say without thinking. When we say things without thinking, we call that embedded theology. Okay? It just comes natural. It's what we just boom, it pops out. So here's one that's very common, and I used this one last week. A mother comes to you, and she just lost her child, or lost her baby girl. And you may say something like, God must have needed another angel in heaven.
Ooh.
Okay? While this might meant to console by affirming to the mother that, yeah, God's got that child in God's hands now, it also opens up questions as, why did God need my little girl? And doesn't God have enough angels already? I mean, think about those types of, when you're looking for things to say, think about the types of questions that could come back to you.
Bonnie said to me one time, well, she didn't say it to me, but I heard her say it, what can I do to help you? And I never thought about that before, but she said it, so it rings a bell every time I hear it.
And that's good.
Bonnie, don't you remember?
So, we just had, the
Probably
little girl,
something just popped out.
That's good.
instead of saying, God needs another angel in heaven, what else might we say to this mother who is grieving? What else, you got an idea what else we could say?
Can I help you with the other children?
If she has other children.
Her
But you want to get her pain, she's feeling the pain of her little girl right now.
pain is gone, the little girl.
I don't think I want to hear that.
That's kind of cheating a bit of that, because you don't know if the little girl was in pain or not. You know the mother has pain. Little girl may have been a healthy little girl and just had an accident or something.
And I think sometimes when people lose someone close to them, I comforted myself when my dad died. He lived a full life though, and he was no longer in pain, and he was better off, and that comforted me for myself. But sometimes when you say things like that to other people, they want what they wanted, and what I wanted was for God to take away my child's pain and heal her and make it okay, not just take her to heaven. And I think that's why I try to avoid. I comforted myself, but I don't think I've ever tried to comfort somebody else and say, well, they're out of pain, unless they said it first.
Mhm. You might say something like this.
I would tell them that I was going to keep them in my constant prayers.
Yes.
And if there was any way at all that I could help, I was there for them at any time.
And that's good. Another way you might say, I can't imagine the pain you're feeling right now, but know that God loves you and your little girl, and I believe God is suffering with you even now.
Absolutely.
See, God's suffering with every loss we have. You want to relay that. God's on this journey with us. God's not this big puppet master going, I need that one, and I need that one. God's on a journey with us. And if you relate it to this mother saying, I just can't imagine the pain you're going through. But understand that God loves you, and God loves your little girl.
To believe that God needs anything, if he really doesn't need.
I don't know why, but it always bothers me when people think that when you die, you become an angel.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to go off on that tangent, but that always bothers me, so I would have to bite my tongue.
Works through us, but he doesn't, it's not.
There's us and there's angels. We're separate.
Okay, let me give you another one to try on. How about this one? He lived a good long life. It was his time to go.
I'm sorry, but I've said that before.
Well, and we all have.
And-
I've said things that I've regretted. But how might we rephrase this to provide hope? I mean, yeah, the gentleman lived a nice long life.
We have wonderful memories.
We have wonderful
That's a
memories.
great one.
You know, we have wonderful memories of this person. Okay, that's a good one.
Or was he ready to be
Well,
God?
You know, we don't know that. That's for God to know.
Here's the thing, I'm gonna come back to what my daddy said to me when he was dying and what I said back to him. Sherry, don't cry for me. I'm not. I'm crying for me.
That's
I
true.
wasn't crying for him. And so when someone's grieving, their grief is really not about this person's, this person has suffered a death. Their grief is about, I miss this person and they're gone and I'm not gonna see them again until, and you know, that's tough to deal with.
You know, this statement, he lived a good long life, it was his time to go, is another way of saying, get over it.
Uh-huh.
Okay? When you think about it, well, it was his time to go. Get over it. What are you worried about? You know?
Yeah, but
How would you know that? Only God knows.
No, but see,
You don't really know.
but what that statement I just said though implies that to somebody who's suffering.
Right.
So you want to say things like, you know, oh, we have such wonderful memories, or you know, can we share some memories, or you know, again, I go back to, you know, God loves you, and God loves this man, and you know, God's suffering just as much as you are right now.
But you know, when you're angry and you're hurt, I don't think that helps either.
No, but
Because I'm angry at him when he hurts me,
right,
but I haven't really been there much.
but you're not you're the care seeker at this point. I'm talking the caregiver has to word things in a
Do
way.
it the right way.
You know, if you're angry and I come right at you and say, well, it was his time to go,
Yeah, I'm gonna say you got it.
that's not gonna help, okay?
Yeah.
She might look at you and say, no, it's your time to go.
Yeah, and it might very well be. But the point is,
But
you always
yeah, I
wanna,
agree with you.
you wanna come back and tie God in, you know, God's with you, God loves you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even through this, it's okay to be angry. You know, you said you're angry. You can assure them, it's okay to be angry at God. God can handle it. But understand, know that God loves you, God's here with you, God's suffering with you. Okay? We don't ever want to short circuit or push it back. That opens up, and then they even ask you, well, how does God love me?
He died.
Then you can go into some more stuff, see?
Yeah.
But, you know, you don't ever want to just act like, well, you know, get over it. It's
And the other thing I see really often is somebody dies in the family and nobody, after 2 or 3 weeks, they just forget them.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, okay. And I can feel guilty for it because I did it to my mother, although I didn't live in the same spot. I didn't forget her, I just forgot about what she was going through. And I live every day thinking about it too.
So we know our words are important. The way we use our words are very important. The old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but your words will never hurt me.
Thank you.
That's a farce.
Yeah.
That's a farce.
Sticks and stones.
Words can hurt, but words can also heal. We can use our words in a positive way to provide the hope and the caring concern. And if we're actively listening to what the person's saying, we'll use the appropriate words to help them find that hope they're searching for. Okay? So that's all part of this listening, is finding the right things to say. Be careful. This is something I've got to learn. I'm still working on it. My mouth engages about 1.5 seconds before my brain says go. Okay? Brain's working through it, the mouth's already spitting it out.
And maybe that's a good thing to realize is most people are uncomfortable with silence, but there's nothing wrong with a moment of silence.
There
While
isn't.
you gather your thoughts, or while you allow them to gather their thoughts, we don't have to rush to fill the silence.
Exactly, and Joe made that point earlier where he just came and sat and listened. You know, and we're talking the segment. That's very important. Just sitting there listening, even if you don't have them to say it right away. Just letting them know. You can do it through your eye contact, you can do it through the way you sit, the way you're approaching them. You can show your care, okay? And then you can use that silence to really think about what it is you want to say, and to say it in a way that offers hope and compassion. Instead of like, you know, if I keep myself engaged, though it's already out, and I'm going, wait a minute, the brain said we're changing this, we're working this.
Silence is golden.
Most often.
Yeah.
So listening, active listening, not just listening, but active listening. There's a difference. Listening is just kind of listening to what's going on, like the radio stuff. Active listening means you're engaging that person. You're trying to use these tools to get a better understanding and perspective of where that person's at. So it's a skill that can provide that person with effective care. If they fail to listen to what the person is saying, or if we try too hard to guess at where they're going or trying to convey, or if we put too much of ourselves into the fray, too much personal information into the fray, we're not given a type of care that is not only needed, but deserved. Our first response to anyone seeking care is to listen. To actively listen and try to understand what that person is trying to say to the best of our ability. And that's, best of our ability. We're not perfect listeners. Even though we have 2 ears, we're not perfect listeners. That's why all these tools come into play to help us get to a better place so we actually hear what that person is trying to tell us. And we talked about presence. A key element is your presence. When you're listening, showing your presence, being with them, you're sharing the journey with them. You're going to walk this path as long as they need you on this path and want you on this path. Sometimes just being there, listening, showing compassion, and caring concern can go a long way to helping someone in times of grief or suffering. One more thing. It just isn't my job. I get paid to do it. To be a counselor, to be a pastor, to do all the things that a pastor does. But all of us are caregivers. We all have the ability to be competent and responsible caregivers. We've been given a set of tools here that if we practice these and try to remember these tools, when someone does come to us expressing grief, because somebody's probably going to trust Fletcher a lot more than they're going to trust me right now. It's entirely possible. They may go to Fletcher first. If he has these tools in his tool bag, he can be an effective counselor also. There's nothing, all of us are caregivers. We're all part of the same community. We're all in the same boat.
And I've always been told that we're all ministers too.
We're all ministers.
So
Every one of us.
That's our job that God has given us too. This is what God has given us to do.
This is what God's given us. I'm going to end with a quote from Peggy Way. Indeed, local churches may be the only place within our culture where lament and praise, gratitude and sorrow, grief and joy, limitation and boundary breaking find common ground. In other words, our churches are a place where all these emotions can be expressed in a way that provides comfort and care and hope. You go to the middle of Walmart and try to do this, you're probably going to get thrown out.
Yeah, right.
Our churches are important institutions, important places to be, to offer this type of care to people who are in need. Active listening is a wonderful way to show interest and to show value with the person we're engaging. We've been given some tools, and next week, you're going to see how well your pastor did at using these tools in our role play. And I'm going to end today's session. We're going to have some questions if you like, but I got another handout for y'all. It's called the parish paper. I'm sure you've all seen or have heard of the parish paper. This is from the UCC, United Churches of Christ.
Right.
I'm sorry. But it gives us some tools on paraphrasing, what to say, what not to say, what responsive listeners do. You can take this home. It's 2 pages. But you can take this with you, and you can use this as a reference piece of material. Especially if somebody calls you up and say, my friend just died, you're going to go meet him. You can look at this and get some ideas of what to say and what not to say. Any questions? Any concerns? You all can participate well. I enjoyed the banter. Got to keep me straight.
Preacher, I'm not a pro at counseling, but it seems to me that a great way to set the tone is to begin with prayer, in which you acknowledge that God's hurting just like we are, and God wants us to be, God wants to comfort us because he is the great comforter. Christ himself is up there pleading and interceding for us. And
You probably need to ask the person if it's okay to pray. 'Cause they may be at a point, if they're angry, they may not want to pray.
that's right. Some people are angry and that's probably the devil.
But hopefully through the session, as we're going through these tools,
You can-
they'll get to a point where you can at least do a closing prayer with them.
Right.
But we kind of feel it. I was going to get back to the why question in a minute.
I don't want to go why, I was gonna make a statement for myself. I don't feel like I'm going to be the one that solves their problem. Through the counseling and our discussions and we're gonna lead them to come to the solution to the problem. They have to be the one that does it. I can't do it for them. They have to be the one that does it.
Exactly, and that's why I'm trying to key on, we can't be problem solvers. We are on a journey with them as they go through this. And these tools help us join the journey with them and help them through it. But we're never going to be the problem solver. Now, one caution on why questions. Sometimes why questions sound judgmental. Why did your brother not come? That almost sounds judgmental at times. Why did this happen to you? You know, why questions can be good, but they got to be used very sparingly. I like the how, or have you considered, or other types of questions where there's some gray area where the person can use that instead of being felt judged, can use that as a bridge to carry on the conversation. But if you start going, why, it's a judgmental type question.
No, but I think when you ask them, do you know, did your brother share with you why he wasn't going to be able to attend?
That's a good question, and then that's perfectly fine. But if you go, if I just turn it around a bit, why didn't your brother come? That
He
you know,
probably doesn't really know, man.
yeah, he may not know. That's throwing a judgment on him. But if you phrase it, wait, do you know why he didn't come? That allows him to say, well, I do or I don't. Okay, with no judgment involved.
Right.
So the only thing I'm cautioning is don't start off with the word why. You can avoid it and go somewhere else. Because that why can lead to somebody going, ooh, wait a minute, they're attacking me now.
He didn't come to me.
We don't want that. Any other comments? Any other concerns, issues?
Give a little thing down here.
That's not me. I got that off the internet today.
We
It's
also
similar to our disciples paper. We get similar.
We had a similar one in the
Yeah.
disciples.
Yeah.
I think
Most
hugs
of us are
help
familiar with her, Bill.
Hugs help a lot.
Hugs help a lot, but you also, if you talk really touching, you got to make sure that
I know.
it's welcomed.
But I cried a lot of tears on a lot of people in this church.
And it's very comforting. It's very reassuring, and it's very it's very hopeful. But we got to make sure.
I think it's okay, or at least I've used this at school, because you gotta be really careful with kids at school. Sometimes I'll say, is it okay if I give you a hug? Or I'll say, is it okay, sometimes I don't say, do you wanna pray about this right now? And I'll say, is it okay if I pray about this? You know, like, I'm gonna go home and pray about it. Usually as soon as I'm out of the presence, I'm praying about it, but, you know, sometimes that's how I bring prayer, or if there's gonna be any touching, and bring that, I just flat ask them.
And notice, my wife does the same thing at the grocery store. She says, "Can I give you a hug?" That gives the person an out. Say, "No, I don't feel comfortable." Or, "Yes, I would like it." And that's perfectly legitimate. It's okay to ask those types of questions. And like, can I pray for you? You're taking responsibility. You're not saying, "Can we pray?" You're not trying to. They may be wanting to, and if they want to, you say, "Can I pray for you?" They say, "Yeah, I would like that." And then you can do a prayer. So they say, "Well, that'd be fine if go someplace else." So, these are the judgments you got to make when you're dealing with somebody. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different way of approaching grief and loss and stress and all these things. It's difficult. But if we use some of these tools, it should help us get there quicker and not be floundering so much going on. What do I do? What do I say? How do I help? The main thing is right here, active listening. Make sure you're engaged with the person. Make sure you're trying to understand what they're saying, because you learn an awful lot.
When elders and deacons and so forth their function most of the time, it seems to me, is to share the person's grief as opposed to giving them counseling.
Mm-hmm.
So you still may have need for some of the tools in the toolbox. I think the biggest tool is just making the other person totally aware that you're hurt with them and you're sharing with them, and to the extent that will comfort them or help them.
And in this church
Yeah.
family especially,
Yeah.
because we're all so close.
Mhm.
We've been together so
Yeah.
many years, and it
But see-
is like somebody in the family's gone, and we've
Mhm.
lost, what, 5 people?
For like 5 people. But see, that is, but it is a form of counseling. We may not call it counseling, but sharing the grief with somebody, taking the journey with it is a form of counseling, because you're helping them, you're aiding them to express their grief and to work towards whatever outcome they need to have happen. It's not our job to take their grief from them.
Oh, you can't.
It's not
you
our
can't
job,
take it from
it's not our
them.
job to try to fix it.
You can't.
Our
Doesn't
job
go
is
that easy.
to walk through the journey with them, allow them to express it. Some people will take, shorter times, some people take years.
Yeah. I asked the doctor for pills, and he said, you don't need pills, you need to breathe.
Yeah, you do.
It's important.
That's why when I pray for people who are grieving, I don't pray that God's gonna take the pain all away, but I just pray that God will help them grieve in a healthy way, because there's healthy grieving and there's unhealthy grieving. And people can get stuck in different stages of grief. And so when I pray for people, I pray that God will help them grieve in a healthy way, but get through that grief, however long it's gonna take.
And that's where, this one here comes in. You evaluate that when you're dealing with somebody, and if you see they're doing it unhealthy, we try to use our tools in our toolbox to help them. And then if we can't, we need to be strong enough to refer, okay, this is beyond my capability. Don't be afraid to say it's beyond your capability.